Once upon a time, there is a bear and a George and a Hubert. Now the bear and the George and the Hubert got into this boat and went fishing down on Mobile Bay. The bear, he got thirsty and stepped out of the boat and walked on the water to the shore and got a drink and walked on the water back to the boat. After a while, the George, he got thirsty too, and he stepped out of the boat and walked on the water to the shore and got a drink and walked on the water back to the boat. Now the Hubert, he said to himself, "Hubert, if the bear and the George can walk on the water, you can walk on the water too." So the Hubert, he stepped out of the boat onto the water and promptly proceeded to go under 3 times. After the bear and the George pulled him back into the boat, the Hubert heard the bear say to the George, "George, reckon we ought to tell him about that stone walkway." Then there was the time when the bear flew up to New York City. He sure caught them sports writing fellas off guard. They thought he used a plane. As the bear walked down the street there in New York City, he stopped in front of the Empire State Building. He looked up at it and said, "Uh-huh." Somebody came up and said, "Hey," said, "ain't you the bear?" And the bear said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, what you doing in New York City, bear?" And the bear said, "I'm standing here looking at the Empire State Building." And he said, "What you doing that for, bear?" And the bear said, "I'm gonna move it." And he said, "Now look here, bear. When y'all say you're number one down there, we believe it. We even believe that story about you getting hit by a motorboat while walking on the water on Mobile Bay. But when you stand there with your bare face hanging out and tell us you're gonna move the Empire State Building, we ain't never, ever, ever gonna believe that one." And the bear said, "Oh, I ain't gonna move it by myself. I'm gonna have some help." And he said, "Well, who's gonna help you, bear?" And the bear said, "George." And he said, "Well, where y'all gonna put it?" You know, there's always a doubting Thomas in every crowd. One came up to me the other day and he said, "Hey, you reckon what they said about the bear in that magazine a while back is true?" And I said, "I don't know, fella. When we all get to heaven, I'm gonna ask you." And he said, "Well, what if a bear don't make it to heaven?" And I said, "Well, you ask him then." Friends, you're tuned to station SKUNK Smellville. This program comes to you through the courtesy of the Celsipac Chewing Gum Company, owned and operated by the Celsipac Brothers. Now, if you like this program, you go down there to your nearest dealer and rip the top of his store off and send it in and get you a free pack of gum. Now we take you to our newsroom for a sports bulletin about the illness of all the conference football players except the Rolling Tide. This psychiatrist called in on the case thinks he has the answer. You see, all these players went into shock the other day when they heard that story on the radio that started with, "And then there were 3 bears."